Welcome to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, publisher of Aspire Magazine, the premier inspirational digital magazine for women since 2006. And, for 6 years, I've been dedicated to bringing you conversations to inspire, empower, and support you in living your best life. And, in these times of struggle and chaos, we can feel off center, off balance. But imagine having an inner faith and a trust so magnificent that you are fully aligned with your true self and confident with every choice. Imagine no more worries, self-doubt, judgment, fear, or insecurities that keeps you up at night. It sounds like a wonderful goal, but I bet you're asking, is it even possible, Linda? Well, as someone who was diagnosed with clinical depression and anxiety for years, my special guest, a dear friend of mine, Shannon Kaiser, knows that it is. Through her own spiritual journey, she cured herself by awakening her faith and intuition. And since then has helped so many like herself. Today, we'll talk about how to transcend fear and rediscover hope with a step-by-step process for intuition development and spiritual attunement. Shannon's a world-renowned spiritual and self-love teacher, speaker, and empowerment coach, a best-selling author of 5 books on the psychology of happiness and fulfillment, including The Self-Love Experiment, Adventures for Your Soul, and Joy Seeker. And I'm excited to say her just released, which is in my hands right now, Return to You, 11 Spiritual Lessons for Unshakable Inner Peace. She's also the creator of the absolutely gorgeous and these energetically aligned oracle cards called Unshakable Inner Peace, and guides people to awaken and align to their true selves so they can live their highest potential. Welcome, my beautiful friend.
Hi, it's so wonderful to be here with you today.
Well, you and I have followed each other for years. I have always been drawn to your message, whether it's a blog post or, of course, one of your best-selling books. And it's all, for me, Shannon, watching you and reading you over the years, I always feel like you're so tapped in that your own journey always seems to tap into what is out there and what people need most at the moment. So your new book, Return to You, 11 Spiritual Lessons for Unshakable Inner Peace, you have your own personal story that led you to writing that book. So why don't we start there with what you experienced?
Yeah, and thanks for that. I think the tapped in is really about alignment. And that's kind of what's been guiding me my whole career, my whole life. And as you know, I haven't always done this work. Several years ago, I was depressed and in advertising, but then I was able to find my happy by going on an inward journey. So I had been doing this work of writing books, coaching, traveling the world, leading retreats, and really practicing the message of joy and sharing that. But interesting enough, a few years ago, about 8 years into leading this kind of message, I was on book tour for my last book that came out, which was all about seeking joy and truly finding your authentic happiness. While I was on book tour, something very interesting happened to me. I started to have these panic attacks, and I remember breaking out into a cold sweat, having a really hard time breathing. And in that moment, I was realizing this is a full-on panic attack. And my ego was saying, Shannon, who do you think you are? It was so loud and so disturbing. And here I am, like a global coach, leading and helping people. And it came in and it said, who do you think you are? There's so much pain in the world. You can't be happy. And the main message it said is, this is all going to go away. This is all going to go away. And I thought this was interesting. I didn't at all judge it. I'm far enough along kind of to recognize in our spiritual journey that when things happen, they show up for a reason. And I truly believe that anxiety isn't happening to limit us. It's showing up in our life to free us from something that is out of alignment, to free us from a life that is no longer aligned. So I went into that. And for the next several weeks, I started to realize that through these panic attacks, because they kept continuing after the tour, that I was being asked to go deeper. And I remember one day very specifically, and this is really where the whole deeper aspect of my teaching and my book and the card deck that's come out really kind of was born. I was kind of reaching out and to the doctor, I said, gosh, I'm so stuck. And I believe our doctors, of course, have a lot of help. And there are times in our life where medication can work. But in this moment, there was a force field that wrapped around me. It was almost like my angels. It felt very benevolent, loving, like my higher self, if you will. And it said, Shannon, you can't fix an internal spiritual situation with an outside physical solution. And that was a
Wow.
very turning point. I realized, wow, what I'm being asked of myself is to go deeper into what is my faith really? What do I really stand for? And that led me on a path of really discovering what true peace is through the contrast of living through anxiety for several months.
What a powerful story. And I can so relate, as so many of us can, in these last few years, about how panic and fear can take us over and make us feel disconnected from our source. But my personal experience is when we're never disconnected from our source, right? We're disconnected from ourselves.
Yeah.
So when you heard that message, Shannon, some people would hear it and say, and allow their fears to say, no, I don't want to face what I have to face to go through it, right? To dive deeper. It was just a knowing and a commitment that your heart felt immediately.
Yeah, what's interesting is you say what that voice you heard, and the heard is the key word, because I heard a message and I often will hear messages. And what I've learned and what I know is this is my intuition. And excuse me, we have different intuition styles. And I found that the way my intuition spoke to me is a guiding light. It's almost a loving way for me to navigate this crazy world. And I think the more in tune we get with our own intuitive voice, the more grace and ease we will be able to exist in the world with.
Oh, 100%. And I'm like you, I'll hear my guidance. And sometimes, I don't know about you, Shannon, when I don't listen, it's like a shout.
Yes,
It is
exactly.
It's like, girl, do I have to smack you upside the head?
Or the universe will bring you stuff constantly to like make it harder, right?
Yeah, I used to tell a woman years ago, the divine would flick me on the ear and go, hey, Lynn, I think you're going the wrong way. And I wouldn't listen. Then I'd get the smack on the head a little harder and I didn't listen. I was always the slowest learner, Shannon, and I waited for the cosmic 2x4 to bring me to my knee.
Oh, yeah.
And I did that for decades.
Mm-hmm.
So when I hear a woman's story of being able to trust, this is what I take from it. You trusted in that voice of your divine guidance, your inner wisdom, your support team. Was that a journey to get to that day, the day you were going to pick up the phone? Was it a journey that you had been building and working on trusting that voice, that intuition?
Yeah, it's interesting because trust and trusting ourselves is, I think, the thing that most of us are really looking for. And the book that had come out prior, I tend to write about what I need to learn. And Joy Seeker really is about trusting yourself so you can live the life you're made for. So I had already kind of lived through this process of learning how to trust myself. And the way we do that is recognizing that the insights that come to you are really important because they're your soul guiding you. And so I have lived a life where I've had this as a little girl. I was very intuitive, and we live in a world that doesn't really train you to honor these parts of ourselves, and I was a very sensitive person and was very empathic, but I didn't know this. And so I was actually bullied quite a bit. I also had a learning disability. If you've ever gotten an email from me, then my spelling, if I don't have an editor, it's just one of these things that it's my whole life. I've just kind of lived with it. But one of these things is, when I was younger, I was bullied so hard that I split away. It became more important for me to fit in than to try to write. Or I remember a friend one time, she read one of my papers and she's like, is this a secret language? Because all of the words were like upside down, backwards, misspelled. And I was so embarrassed. The class laughed. And so the reason I bring this up is because we all have moments in our life where we split away from who we are, most often to fit in. Mom comes in and says, you're too loud, be quiet, or don't do that. And we shy away from what really matters to us. And so the trust comes in where you rebuild yourself back together as an adult, as we realize the parts of us that are still left in childhood. And really, that's what Return to You is all about. That's what my inner journey was. It's about putting all the pieces back together so I could be my whole self. The anxiety was showing up because I wasn't honoring my whole self. I had left advertising several years prior. I was in a whole different career and I was a graphic designer. And so I went and said, okay, I'm going to leave this career and be a writer and a coach. So for 8 years, I was helping people, being of service, doing what I love. But the anxiety showed up because I wasn't honoring the creative parts of me. So I sat down and I started to design, and my anxiety started to lessen because it was one day in meditation where my inner voice said, you need to create, babes. You're a creator. And I started to create these beautiful little images that helped me find peace. And then I looked at them and I realized I had an oracle deck. And this deck, it was like it was speaking to me. It said, you need to turn this into an oracle deck for other people. So through my anxiety, I tapped into who am I really and how can I put myself back together in wholeness? And it led to the next layer, which is, of course, Unshakable Inner Peace.
Well, I have to tell you, I have those cards along with being so physically beautiful. There's a beautiful energy and intention about them. I love using them and they just ground me. They have that's the energy, such a beautiful grounding energy that brings me right into my heart.
Thank you. I put so much love into them. So I'm glad you feel that.
I do feel it. And we're going to take a real quick break, Shannon. When we come back, I want to talk about why it's important to develop and strengthen your own connection with self and spirit. And you can visit Shannon at playwiththeworld.com. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. With me today is Shannon Kaiser, author of Return to You, 11 Spiritual Lessons for Unshakable Inner Peace, which is now available. You have to go grab your copy. So right before the break, Shannon, you were talking about, learning to trust in your journey to that. I think so many of us, and I can only speak for myself, for decades, that's the words I used. I was very disconnected from myself. Of course, a lot was from my childhood. So why is it important for our listeners to develop and strengthen that connection with themselves, their spirit, their inner wisdom?
Yeah, this is our number one guiding, really our blueprint for living a fulfilled life, a connected life, a life of integrity. It's trusting yourself in the innate wisdom that is within us. We all have a set point and compass, if you will. There was a study done in the UK and it turned into a book, a very popular book called The Regrets of the Dying. And the number one regret of people who are on their deathbed is, I wish I would have lived a life true to myself instead of listening to everyone else, instead of what others wanted for me, followed by, I wish I allowed myself to be happier. So many of us are living for other people. We're trying so hard to make others happy, and it's causing disease, it's causing anxiety and depression, and it's chronic illness. And so really what we want to do is recognize the way we've been living is not sustainable and it's not working. And so the fix really is, and this is the journey that I went on, to go into your inner world. And when you start to heal yourself, when you start to arrive to a place of trusting yourself, you uplift yourself, you're healthier, you're happier. And in that place, you're actually helping the world. You're able to be there for others more fully. And it really does start with anyone listening, just getting in touch with your intuition. When we say trust ourselves, it's about learning. In my book, Return to You, there's a whole section on how to know what your intuition style is. And I think learning how you talk to you or listen is really key. A simple thing we can do is ask ourselves. And one of the questions I ask in there is, when you watch a great movie and see something that's really good and you tell a friend about it after, how do you share that movie? Do you say, oh my gosh, the scenery, the visual effects, the costumes, they were so gorgeous, or do you say the soundtrack is so good? Maybe your music library is full of music from movies. Or do you remember how it made you feel Was it an emotional ride for you? Or, of course, was there the storyline and the characters? You say the acting is so good. This is an indicator, of our intuition. For example, if you really related to the visuals, then your intuition is a clairvoyant, which means you see images in your eyes, in your mind's eye, if you will. And then, of course, if you've heard of the clairs, it goes on. There's the clairaudient, which is about listening. And that's for me. I hear, just like you, we hear it, right? We hear this voice. It sounds like this coming outside of us, but it's in our head. We're not going crazy. It's our intuition. And then, of course, you can go on if you have that gut feeling. It's a knowing, like about the characters and how it made you feel. Then you are definitely a feeler, clairsentient. And you get your intuition through feelings, like I should not go down that street. I don't know why, but I need to trust that feeling. And then if you really pay attention to this kind of the storyline, these are the clear knowing that I call them, or what they're known as is the claircognizant. You have just a knowing within you. So of course there's deeper processes, but I say the more in touch with our intuition, the more you start to arrive to a place of an unshakable peace, because you're being guided by benevolent love.
It's my life experience. I believe this with all my heart. That's why your book really touches in our language. Like, you have a way of putting things in words, and I'm like, what is she doing in my head? What is she doing in my heart? I can so relate with how you describe things. I'm clairaudient with a strong clairsentient. I get knowings, and now I act on them. So for everyone listening, I just want to share, it's normal that when you first hear and you go, is that real? Because Shannon, I'm sure you did this too. Like, oh my God, is that my ego talking? That's just me saying what I want to hear. But sometimes it's not what you want to hear, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And so it took me a long time to lean in, trust. But as Shannon was so just beautifully saying, once you become familiar with how you process, it opens up so much. It opens up, it's like exercising your trust muscles. You have to exercise every other muscle. Why not exercise your trust muscles?
Yes, that's exactly it. Mm-hmm.
And in your book, you walk them through different questions and journaling prompts throughout the book, in processes. So is there something in there that will give them even more guidance on those clairs?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the clairs, what's really special is once you kind of identify which one you are, I take people through a process, of course, where you can step into building those even more. So, it's interesting because you talk about I just have a knowing. And this is often, I'm just like you. No wonder we're soul sisters.
Yes.
Because when I was in advertising, before I started doing all the work that I do today, I was the queen of ignoring my intuition. It was like, you should not be dating this person. You do not like this career, but I did not listen to it. And it led to a full-on diagnosis of clinical depression. I would actually pass out in public places because I had so much anxiety then. And so it was interesting because I was ignoring all of them, because the main one I had at the time was the clear knowing. I just knew it. And there's nothing you can pinpoint when you're kind of, I would be able to just know things before they happened. And that seems very weird in this world. And if you start to recognize when this happens, it's actually, I thought I was going crazy, but what I started to learn was I'm an empath. And as empathic people, we pick up energy from others. So most of what I was feeling in my depression, I'm a pretty positive person. I tend to make the most out of things. I have learned that the depression was really, as Jim Carrey has this quote where he says, depression is the avatar that you're tired of playing the character that you're playing. And I was exhausted living this life that didn't even feel in alignment for me. So part of that depression and anxiety was there, but another part was me ignoring my inner voice. And so I truly believe and feel and work with clients in my own practice to really understand these ailments that we have, and not to look at them as bad, but to look at them as signs or indicators, or if you will, kind of a place in our life that needs more attention. So when you're talking about kind of how do we open up to this? It's really about being open in your heart to learning and being open in your mind to unlearning. We have to unlearn a lot of the things we've learned, such as how to try to make everyone else happy over yourself. That's hurting all of us.
Oh, it's a big one. And especially, I think at certain ages, right? I'll be 60 and I'll say my friends in this 55 and up, it's like they're going through a major shift the last few years. I went through my major shift at 44 years old, but I'm hearing a thread and it's, oh my God, it's like they woke up in the middle of their life and said, I created this life. I don't like my job. I don't like whatever it is. It's like this feeling of I created something that isn't even in alignment with who I am. And it's like the blinders come off and then they're shell shocked, right? Because they don't know what to do next, Shannon. Have you heard that in your coaching?
Oh, yes. And I think what's really important is we're living in a time right now. And this is actually what I start the book out with, where we're entering into, in astrology, they call it the age of Aquarius, but I like to call it the Great Awakening, or more importantly, the age of intuition. And so many of us, and it's been happening, but really, especially over the last couple of years, all ages, where we wake up from the life. It's almost like we've been sleeping, slumbering, if you will. And you wake up just like you wake up from a dream and you say, wow, I created that. And what do I really want? That's not the life I want. Or, oh, that was a nightmare. The power here, though, is when we wake up, it's always very kind of shocking at first, but recognize that we have way more power than we've been given credit for, than we've been taught. And that's really what the work is. That's what the work, meaning we reclaim our power by knowing that everything we need is within us. And we hear this, right? It sounds like a great bumper sticker, but truly what it means is the guidance, the next right step on who you can work with, or what book to read, or what, beautiful show to listen to. The guidance comes to you because it's you within you and your angels, your support, whatever, however you want to identify, but the spiritual team around you. We live in this benevolent energy that is there to support you. And when we open up to that, it becomes easier. Have you noticed that too?
Oh, I have noticed it completely. And it's now how I navigate life, right? It's like
Yes.
when you get this, I get quite often connect and call this person. And I'm like logically you go, I haven't talked to that person in 3 years. I'm just going to reach out and I hear, just believe. And so I don't have no agenda. I don't even know why I'm calling the person, but now you wouldn't believe little things like that. Somebody will say, this is so weird. I was going to pick up the phone and call you. You've been on my mind. And I'm like, so all these synchronicities, or something you said earlier, well, turn here, right? Don't go that way. Little things like that. And then you find out there was a big traffic jam on that other road if you had taken it.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's kind of like when you started and you said, imagine having an inner faith and trust so magnificent that you're always 100% aligned and guided. Like it really is possible when you tap into that inner knowing and faith, because you're being directed and protected, and you are always going to be right where God, universe, source energy, whatever you align with, is going to be putting you always.
It's so true. And we're going to take another break, Shannon. When we come back, I want to talk about something that you're passionate about sharing, and it's how to stay calm in chaos, because we're all going through chaos right now, emotional, spiritual, world, financial, etc. And it can leave us spinning. So I'd love your insights after the break, and we'll be right back, my friends. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. With me today is Shannon Kaiser. You can find her at playwiththeworld.com. She's the author of Return to You, which is now available, so be sure to grab your copy. So you talk a lot in the book about how to stay calm in chaos. And you recently published an article in Aspire magazine, and the cover feature. We're so excited to share your message, Shannon, on that platform also. And I wanted that topic because I know how many are struggling right now. So what are some ways that you can share with our listeners to stay calm in the midst of chaos?
Oh man, are we living in a chaotic time, right?
Oh yeah.
What's interesting though? I started writing, and my very first book came out in 2013. And I was going back over all of my book lectures and my events for each book. And I've had 6 books in 10 years, which is beautiful and wonderful. But with each lecture, I was looking at them. And funny enough, as I was looking at how I started the talk, it was always, oh, wow, we're going through so much. The world is chaotic. And at each point, it was a very specific thing. One time it was like the terrorism and ISIS, and another time it was a natural disaster. And my point of bringing this up is, up until seeing that so clearly, I think I was always in the, there's another side to this. And there is another side to it when we stop looking outside of ourselves. And so why I'm sharing this is, we live on planet Earth. This is a chaotic place. It's a lot of chaos, but it's also a place of great learning. I like to say we live in a school called planet Earth. And to look out and think the chaos isn't supposed to be there is actually what's causing us more drama and more conflict and more frustration. So the very first thing we can do is detach from drama. And this means looking at where your energy is going and what's taking your energy and life force, if you will. If you talk to a friend and you feel plummeted after, maybe that's an indicator that you want to protect your energy a little bit. Or if you're watching the news and cycling through and doomsday, and Facebook, whatever, look at how you feel after you take in information and after you show up. You want to protect your energy first. And so that looks like carving out daily moments of peace, taking time to go into nature, taking time to be present. But one of my favorite tools from detaching from drama is, yes, okay, so the world's chaotic, but we go through different phases. We are making it through. I truly believe we're living in a more peaceful world, even though it may not always look like it, but we're awakening to the love that is available within us and are all around us. And one of the ways, my favorite tip, is to turn your resistance into assistance. And what I mean by this is, and this is why I started with that story, I was always resisting life. It was like, oh, there's always more drama. There's more people hurting. I don't understand. And we come from the love, and it hurts our hearts. I remember crying after all these events, and you feel hopeless. It's not until I started to say, okay, I do have more power, and I'm going to stop resisting and thinking the life is not, the world's going to keep worlding. I need to take my power back. So how can I help? And for example, here in Oregon, I live outside in Portland, Oregon. We had wildfires for several days while I was writing my book. And we had the blood orange sky. People were wearing the really heavy masks. We had the worst air quality in the world for several days. It was very traumatic because we live in a wet climate. We never see that. I was falling into a hopeless doomsday prediction, thinking like isolating in my house, feeling very scared. We had family friends that were displaced and even lost their homes from the fire. And when that happened, I realized I'm doing nothing, sitting here thinking the world's going to end. And that was resisting. I was resisting what was happening in my life. And I said, well, what can I do to help? And I started to go around my house and I gathered toiletries. I created a fundraiser. I started to donate things to the people in need. So if you're feeling hopeless, if you're feeling like, God, that we live in such a crazy world, it's too chaotic, or maybe it's not even out in the world, it's in your own personal life, you kind of tap into, well, what can I do to help right today? How can I help? How can I be of service?
I love this. I wrote it down, turn your resistance to assistance.
Mm-hmm.
It takes us out of ourselves, doesn't it? It takes us out of our ego, our thoughts, and we're just tapping into love.
Yes.
And it just shifts our energy, that simple thing. Just even as you were sharing the story, I could feel my energy shift.
Yeah. And that's what it is. Yeah. Because we're so many of us are in this place of stunted, fear takes over, but we have the power to move through that with taking action. So it's love in action, if you will.
Yeah. And one of the things I've used, because I suffered from depression, anxiety, especially the first, I'm going to be 60 this year. So I'd say 35, 40 years. And as I got on this path, I used to have a mantra. And so when anxiety would come up for me, my mantra was, is this the truth of who you are, Linda? Right? Because just asking that question, I automatically go, no, that's not the truth of who I am. And it would help me shift back to love. Because as you know, Shannon, if we're in fear, we're not in love.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right? And so that really helped me. And I just want to share a story that really ties into what you just said. I received flowers the other day, right? So they weren't signed. It just said, thinking of you. And I'm like, oh. And then my honey came home and he said, did you see the flowers? I said, yes. I said, who are they from? He goes, well, they're from Dave. Now, I haven't seen Dave in 20 something years. He's a friend of both myself and Dana. And we maybe talk, maybe Shannon, maybe every 6 months and touch base with them. So of course I called to say thank you. I go, Dave, what was the purpose of your flowers, right? I think they're beautiful. Thank you. And his words broke my heart. He's alone. And he said to me, I was feeling really sad about my life and my decisions and feeling really lonely and down on myself. And I said, I am not staying here. And he sent 4 people in his life flowers. And this is a man that can't really afford that. And he said, when I called him, he just started crying because I didn't know what he was going through. I said, Dave, you brought such joy to my day. It was a tough day for me. I had some doctor's appointments. I said, and I walk in and there's your flowers and they melted my heart and made me feel so loved. And he started crying.
Wow.
Now it's exactly what you said, right? He was in his muck. He was in deep pain and he could tell he was drowning in it. And he decided, I thought it was so beautiful. He decided, well, I'm going to spread joy. And
that's exactly, it's so beautiful.
Yeah. And it's little things, right? It took him making a phone call to spread joy. It's the same thing with what you did. You turned your resistance of what was happening in your community to assistance. He did the same thing, but he was assisting himself in that time. He was consciously trying to shift the energy out of pain. And that's the part I thought was so beautiful, that he was able to do that in that time of darkness.
Thank you for sharing that story, because that's love. That's what happened where he shifted the energy. And that's the key. You're shifting the energy because, when I say resistance, it's really fear. It's really the doubter. Our ego takes over. We feel stuck. And the world's just trying to keep us stuck, but we can rise above it by coming together with community, with love, with hope.
Yeah. And something you said earlier too, it's like, it's a carving out for daily moments of joy and peace, right? Like reading your book. I've been reading this every morning during my quiet time since I received it. That's my part of my morning ritual, right? And that's how we can counteract the chaos of the world, by balancing our energies with love. And I'll tell you, I have to recalibrate all the time. I'm an empath like you. So I'm very conscious of what I take in on media. My head is not in the sand, but I do not deep dive, because I know if I'm not emotionally and spiritually balanced, it's going to ripple out to my family, to the community, to my clients. So my personal belief system is the divine gave us our divine life force energy. It is our responsibility to honor it and take care of it, because it ripples out to everyone else, right? So I always remember, just be the light, Lynn, be the light, be love, because I know that if I'm in fear and anxiety, that's what my family's feeling. So that's your purpose, like above, like really? I see that as your umbrella is, it begins with you. It begins with you.
That's exactly it. And that's what Return to You is all about. It really is about living the love, embodying the love, being the love that you are, and really freeing yourself from fear, because we live in a world that almost has a blanket of fear, whether it's the constant 24-hour negative news cycle or people feeling stuck by what's happening. And so I love that you do mantras. I love mantras. In the book, I actually put mantras throughout. One of the ones that really helps, and the ones that I really like, is I'm willing to see the love available to me in this experience. And if we're feeling stuck or in chaos, we can tap into the love that is available in each moment. I also like to say, when I was in my anxiety, having those panic attacks, I would use the mantra, all contrast brings clarity. So what am I going through? Well, I am going through anxiety. So what is the opposite? Oh, peace, calm. I'm working my way to that, because to truly know something, as the Tao and the Eastern traditions say, you really have to know the opposite. So we can recognize whatever we're going through, harmony and peace is possible when you tap into what is real, which is peace and love that is within us always.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I am loving our conversation. And we're going to take a final break Shannon, we come back. I want to talk about, well, a couple things. I want to talk about, like in lesson 7, you share about in order to receive, you must release. I think that is powerful. And I want to share the exciting news that when everyone grabs a copy of the book, you also have some beautiful resources available to support them on their journey. So everyone, I invite you to visit playwiththeworld.com, and I will be back in a moment with Shannon Kaiser. Welcome back, my beautiful friends. Thank you for joining us today. This is one of those conversations that I could go on for 3 hours because it's like it's everything that I love. So Shannon, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, I love this conversation. It's so great to be here with you.
Well, thank you. You know, one of the things, I've always known you to be a generous soul and dedicated to love and service. In the book, you actually have resources like the Feeling Inner Peace audio meditation, the mantras, and you give links for them, the quiz, Discover Your Intuition style quiz, and so much more, and that you provide the links for. So I just wanted to say thank you for that, my friend.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. You know, sometimes when I'm reading books, I want to go deeper. So I like to put my books together in a way of what do I need or what do I think will help me? And that's why you get journal prompts, mantras, meditations, and of course, quizzes in this one.
Yeah, and it's so much fun. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So one of the things that I found has blocked me over the years, for decades, was my ability to receive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's about a story that I had to heal. But in lesson 7, you share a statement, in order to receive, you must release. So I'm curious to know what that statement means to you. I know how I took it, but please share, Shannon.
Yeah, well, in this specific lesson, I talk about a very personal story that I haven't really shared openly, but it's my extreme Miss Independent. I'm Miss Independent, and for so many years, I was like, I can do it. I don't need help. I got it. You know, for many years, I don't even and did not have an assistant in my very busy business. So it started to show up and affect me in relationships where you have to let people in, you have to need people. And it almost became this kind of approach where I started to dig deeper, and I realized I wasn't allowing myself to receive, perhaps because I was giving. And part of my giving was me tied to that's how I equated love. And as far as I'm not worthy unless I'm giving something to the world, I'm not worthy unless I'm overgiving. And I talk a lot in my work of blogs and in my other book, Joy Seeker, there's a whole section about, especially as women, we tend to overgive at the exhaust of ourselves, mainly because we care so much. But there's a tricky line where you're actually giving because you don't feel worthy of receiving. And so this whole entire lesson goes into the psychology, if you will, and also the kind of philosophy of why we are equipped to switch this, how we can actually start to receive, because that is the true blessing available for us. Like you said, receiving is a gift to yourself and the world. And it starts with worth. It starts with turning a lot of the trauma responses that we've been growing up with, thinking I'm not good enough, into no, I do deserve to receive. And it's all tied to our worth, especially business owners. And then you release. So what is it we release? We release the limiting beliefs that are holding us back. We release the things in our life that are not allowing us to really move forward. And of course, there's a beautiful process with mantras that I take people through. But one of the things we can just start with is to recognize that you have more available to you than by being in the silence, by sitting. What shows up? So often, especially us, right? Women, we overdo, we go. We fill our schedules because we want to be of service and help others. But if you were to just sit in your chair and just commune with yourself, you know, some of us do have a meditation practice. I'm talking about just being with you, though. And what happens is you are directly sourced from love. So what you're really doing is sitting with the divine. What you're really doing is giving yourself time to be in love, be in a space of sitting. So when you receive this love, you start to transform everything in your life, and you are definitely embodying more of the peace.
It sounds you can feel, like, as you were speaking and describing the process, my energy was just dropping right down into my heart.
Mm-hmm.
For me,
Mm-hmm.
that is an important part of my day. But it's funny, I do it throughout the day too. I call it moments to be, because
I love
decades ago
that.
I would go 100 miles an hour and didn't know how to be. So I've trained myself that I just drop into my heart, drop into my energy to make sure I'm fully present in whatever
Yeah.
I'm doing. But I call it moments to be. And sometimes Dana will walk in and I'm just sitting quietly, no TV, no phone. And he can tell by the look on my face. I said, I just need to tap in.
You
And
know,
so,
so beautiful. You bring up a really good point. I'm sure you see this too with clients. A lot of times people are trying to make this peace and this serenity there forever, every moment. And that's not what it's about. You know, this unshakable inner peace that that I talk about in the book, it's about tapping in and recalibrating to it. So you're no longer staying stuck in fear and chaos, but you are recognizing that life is a balancing act and we now have the tools to tap in. So I love that visual of you sitting in your living room, just being in tapped in.
well, it really, the word recalibrate is one I often use with clients, because they're like, Linda, you always seem so joyful and relaxed. I go, wait a minute. It's because I have the tools to recalibrate my energy. You don't think I get those thoughts? Of course I do. But because I've used tools, as you, Shannon, I can recalibrate a lot quicker. And that's why I love using my platforms to bring experts like you to give them the tools so they can recalibrate quicker. So they don't, so they learn the truth that they don't have to stay in fear. That even in, one of my favorite sayings is, even in the midst of chaos, there's beauty and joy.
And that's
It really
exactly it.
depends.
It's true.
Yeah. It's what we focus on. As you know, a couple of years ago, end of 2019, Dana got a double diagnosis within 4 days of pituitary brain tumor and aneurysm. And do you think my world didn't spin? Of course it did.
Yeah.
But within days, him and I both looked at each other and he said, we're looking at the blessings. We will not look at the what ifs. It was a personal choice. And thankfully, we're on the same page. To stay grounded in that truth, right, Shannon? Because it was a scary time. I decided personally, I'm going to share my journey on Facebook. And it was more about the feelings, right? Because of the fear that was circulating, all the unknowns and etc. And I called it #seeing the blessings. And I'm going to tell you, we had comments up to 200 something comments at a time. And here's the thread that I wanted to share with you, Shannon. You wouldn't believe how many women said, may I share this? My daughter's going through breast cancer. May I share this? I'm going through a divorce. My friends are going through a divorce. Yeah. I gave them permission to see that, yes, my life is very messy right now. Yes, I could be in fear, but I'm not. I'm going to look for the blessings in the midst of this chaos. And guess what, Shannon? More and more blessings happened throughout that 18 months that I can't even put into words, that I know it was the divine. But if we had let fear take us down that rabbit hole, I don't know if we would have experienced the miracles and blessings, or maybe we just wouldn't have seen them. But I know from personal experience that it is so true. We can find peace in the midst of chaos. And that's why I was determined that you were coming on this show to talk about this.
Yes. You know, the quote by Stephen Richards is like really ringing through. Our level of love or our level of fear determines our state of reality. And that is what you're sharing, is you guys had a moment where you could have dropped into fear, but you said, absolutely not. And because you chose love and stayed in that love, you not only were able to help others and inspire them, but you were able to use your voice and connect together. And now look where you guys are today. That's such a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome, because we all go through our moments of chaos may look different, of course. Everyone has unique experiences, but the energy of love is there the same for all of us. We just have to continue to look for it. So in our last 2 or 3 minutes, is there anything else that you would like to share? Some tips, some guidance, anything that's intuitively coming through you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things with my process and how I was able to kind of arrive to a place of peace was mantras and meditations and prayers, if you will. So I'd love to share one of my favorite prayers from the book, which is a prayer for peace. And we can look at it as a prayer. If prayer doesn't resonate with you, you could just use it as a mantra. But I like to place my hand on my heart. And, through my journey when anxiety was kind of stepping in, before I started practicing all the tools and lessons in the book, I sat down and wrote this. And this was one of the turning points for me because it's my recalibrator. So all you do is just drop into your heart. You can close your eyes if you want, or just simply say and repeat in your mind, I detach from anything that seeks to separate, anything that says us versus them, anything that says my way or the highway, anything that seeks to destroy, condemn, or blame, or even shame. Instead, I choose unity. I choose kindness, compassion. I choose love, for I am love. And that even just saying, I choose love, for I am love throughout the day is a wonderful step forward into more peace and joy.
That was so beautiful. And you can feel the intention behind it. Shannon, I want to say thank you again for joining me, for the work you're doing in the world, for just being a light keeper for so many and leading them back to the truth of who they are. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you for sharing your energy and time. And it's beautiful to be here with you today.
Well, thank you. And I want to invite everyone to visit playwiththeworld.com. Grab a copy of Shannon's new book, Return to You, as well as her Inner Peace Oracle cards. And until next time, my friends, choose love, choose joy, choose happiness. Blessings.